Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar today. This is the Head Start Performance Standards webinars, looking specifically at the coaching and PD updates. My name is Megan C. I'm the marketing specialist here at Teachstone, and I am today's moderator. I'll also be managing the polls and taking any kind of questions that you have. If you can't hear us, please use that chat panel on the GoToWebinar control panel and just type in, let me know if you can't hear something or anything like that. I'm also joined today with my colleagues, Rebecca Berlin. She is the Chief Strategy Officer here at Teachstone. Rebecca has worn many hats in her life. She has been an early interventionist, an early childhood teacher, an early childhood special education teacher, an autism specialist, a school administrator, and she holds her PhD in research, policy, and administration from the University of Virginia. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. We're so excited for today.
Yeah, me too. And I'm also joined here with Amy Cubbage, who started out her career in early childhood education as a teacher. And she is now our Senior Advisor for Public Policy and Government Relations here at Teachstone. She got her undergrad degree from Brown University, got her JD at Northeastern University School of Law, and her MS in Leadership and Policy in Early Care and Education from Wheelock College. Amy has also served as a National Head Start Fellow for the Federal Administration for Children and Families. And she also co-authored a chapter with Joan Lombardi on Head Start's legislative history in the Head Start debates. So welcome, Amy. You both are bringing a lot of knowledge to the table, so I'm really excited to get this conversation going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. All right, so I want to get this started with a poll just to kind of hear about who's on the line with us today. So let me go ahead and launch our first question. What is your primary, what do you associate when you hear the word class? So I'm going to launch the poll. I think you'll see that now. So if you go ahead and just select one of those options. I'll just give you a couple minutes. Maybe you don't think of any of those things. And if that's the case, you can go ahead and chat that into me and I'll read your answers. Ooh, we got lots of people voting. 33% of you are voting. I'm seeing a lot of coaching and professional development. I'm seeing a lot of classroom interactions. It's kind of going back and forth between the two of you, and I'll give you just one or two more seconds to answer that. All right, so I'm going to close the poll. Just a couple more seconds. All right, and here's the results. So it looks like a lot of you think of coaching and PD and classroom interactions. That's great. All right, and actually I have more polls. We are really excited to hear about you guys today. Now I'd like to know what role summarizes you the best. So who are you at your organization? Watch the poll. And if none of these sound like you, maybe you feel like you are just a researcher. I don't think that's on there. If that's who you are, use that chat panel and let me know. Excuse me. All right, we have a lot of education managers, coaches, and local specialists on the line today. And a few Head Start directors and assistant directors. It's great, not too many teachers. And I'm going to close the poll. There we go. The vast majority of you, education managers, coaches, or local specialists. One more, or three more polls. Which best describes your Head Start grant?
So one of the things that I'm excited about being kind of a birth to 8 person is I was excited to hear that when they consider the new standards, they really think about them birth to 5. And so as we at Teachstone start thinking about things, we've always been talking about infants and toddlers and pre-K kids and that transition. And we're excited that Head Start is really thinking about that way going forward.
Closing the poll. We have a lot of Head Start, early Head Start folks, or Head Start only.
Well, I would say that this is the first time that we've ever had the majority of people who are Head Start, early Head Start, Head Start, early Head Start partnership more than Head Start only. So that is just an exciting piece in the field for you to see.
That's great. Glad everyone's on the line today. All right, so here's a great question. How much do you know about the Head Start standards before we dig into it? And again, if something doesn't sound like it's you, just feel free to type that in. I know I personally have only looked at them just a couple of times. All right, we have a lot of people voting. About half of you have voted already. And it looks like the majority of folks I'm seeing have just opened the standards, or they've only attended one sponsored session. So not a ton of knowledge. I'm going to close that poll and share the results.
So I know we all live busy lives, and I think that's okay. And so one of the things we're doing is beginning the conversation, and we will be doing additional blogs and webinars as they roll out the standards. And I'm also so excited for all the work that OHS has put into them. And if you haven't checked out the resources on eClick, they are being added to by the day. And there are a number of webinars and webinars with transcripts, which I'll touch on later, that you can look at as you want to dig deeper into each of the sections.
Great. All right, one more poll, guys.
This is my favorite one.
Yeah, this is my favorite one for sure. How do you feel about the new standards?
So I added this poll because I was looking through the transcripts, and Dr. Enriquez, in her opening remarks on the standards in the very first webinar that was done, said, "Today is a very exciting day, and people should be excited, but people should also remain very calm." And reading that, it made me crack up. So I want you to think about that as well.
All right, let me go ahead and close this poll and share the results. Okay, so a lot of you have just started to look at the standards like I have, so it's a little bit too soon to tell, but I'm glad to see a statement here.
So, and I agree, it is too soon to tell, and as we kind of unravel them together as a community, I think that'll be important.
All right, so, oops.
So we're going to get started. So,
I
think I want to quote Dr. Enriquez, and I want everyone to stay calm. So as I begin, I think about grounding us. And so I wanted to start with just a few thoughts about why we do this work and what we believe in, and how what we believe in as a community has really led to the standards that are before us, as well as how we then roll those out within our communities. So as I thought about this presentation, I struggled to find the right quote. So I had a couple things I considered. I considered a quote that said, "There are only 2,000 days from when a child is born until that child enters kindergarten." I thought that was a little too ominous. So then I considered, if you want improved interactions, data alone is not enough to see an impact. Good, but not motivating. So this is the quote I settled on. "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action," by Martin Luther King. And I think that's important. Birth to 5 is a time for vigorous and positive action. We are doing so much as a nation right now, and I think it's important for us to continue. So the other place I wanted to ground us is at the teacher and the children level. So I want us to think about this quote. "Today, some children get lucky in their early education experience, and others are less lucky. Teachstone was founded to turn that luck into a guarantee." And so as I think about that, as I think about the mission of our organization, one of the things we're grounded in is, how do we improve the lives of teachers, who then improve the lives of children and families. And we spend a lot of time writing blog posts and doing webinars such as this. And so some of the things that we believe in, what we believe about PD. We believe that there is a significant investment that is needed in PD. And when you make that investment is when you really do see those outcomes. And we're excited that Head Start called out coaching as one of those important ingredients, because we really do think of it as that magic sauce in education. The other thing we believe in is data. So data, when I think about data, I want it to be thought of in this way. There's a quote, I'm not going to be able to attribute it right now, but data should be used as a flashlight instead of as a hammer. And so I was also excited when Head Start really called out data being used in a strength-based. And the idea that data must be grounded in everything you do, and that everything you do should be encircled in data. And it really should be used as part of a continuous improvement process and not as a single point in time. The other thing we really believe in are outcomes. And we think about the fact that it does take a lot of effort to have strong outcomes. And one of the things we know is that evidence-based practices really do make that difference in positive outcomes. And when I have states come to me and think with me in partnership about why they're struggling with coaching and if they're seeing the outcomes they want, one of the things we often come to is that their coaching programs often will lack fidelity, depth, and duration. And it's those components that really help us see strong outcomes. I'm going to repeat those because I think those are important. I was thinking about them this morning over my cup of coffee. Rigor, right? So how rigorous, how based in research is that program? Does it have fidelity to a model? So if Megan and I are doing some things, are we doing them the same way so that her teachers see the same things that I see? Is there depth to what we're doing? So are we talking to teachers once or twice, or are we talking to them over both at length as well as duration over a long period of time? One of the hard things is that programs that have those four components tend to be more expensive in time, in people, and in effort. But what we really do see is that when programs have those components, we really do see strong outcomes. And the last thing we think about, and for those of you who've seen me present or kind of met with me, you guys know I talk with my hands. Megan is now sitting across the table from me so that I don't hit her when I talk and when I'm presenting.
I can confirm that.
But what I do is I kind of put my hands in a semicircle, right? And I say, I'm a researcher, right? And I believe in best practices, but I'm also a strong practitioner, right? And so those sit at two opposite ends of that 180-degree circle. And both of those pieces are important, right? We need to work with programs that have strong academic research, but it is so important that we bring and think about that program level experience. And then we make some decisions, right? If you do something that's only based on what the program needs, but without academic rigor, you may not see change. But if you do something only based on academic research that doesn't understand the day-to-day interactions or your day-to-day data and what your data says, there may be a miss. So we really think about it as a link. And so we were so excited when the new Head Start standards came out to really see these data components, this research component melded with program level experience and this strong look for outcomes. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Amy Stevens-Cubbage, to talk a little bit about the standards.
Thank you, Rebecca, and hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. I work for Teachstone from the field, as we say. I'm up in Hartford, Connecticut area. It's great to be with my colleagues from Charlottesville today and all of you in the field. So, as Rebecca mentioned, we have a passion for supporting teachers. It's really our life's work at Teachstone to unlock the potential of great teaching in every Head Start classroom. And this is why when the draft of the program performance standards were released in the summer of 2015, we were thrilled to see they included language around the key to quality early childhood education is teachers. It's That is what is shared in the overall philosophy of the standards, and it's what we believe in, promoting effective teaching and learning in every Head Start classroom from birth to 5. And because we have this passion for supporting teachers, and Rebecca, we can move to the next slide, we submitted comments, thank you, in the summer of 2015 to the Office of Head Start to support the inclusion of research-based PD, including coaching, as from our personal experience as coaches, and many of us at Teachstone come from the field of teaching and coaching, we know this works. And we know it takes an intensive approach and strong support and guidance. And we come to our work with a deep, profound respect for teachers and the profession of teaching. And while many individual grantees are on board already with intensive coaching, the inclusion of this in the performance standards validates the approach that many of us, and I feel I'm often speaking to the choir, so forgive me, but it validates that approach at the federal level. So we know the knowledge and experience with the class can help with implementation on the Head Start performance standards in a myriad of ways at different times and in different parts of these regulations. And today our primary focus is on the coaching and PD regs. But we'll spend a majority of our time on this, but I want to quickly just touch on a few of the other ways that we can help in the adoption of these new standards. And then we're happy to follow up on any of these with you. We've included a link to our alignment document on the standards and Teachstone's PD programs, so you can see the standard and the way Teachstone's programs and services meet those standards. And that should be, I think Megan is kindly putting it in the chat box, as well as in a panel of handouts for this go-to meeting. So in that document, and now here on your slide, I think they're roughly equivalent. We may have a few extra ones up here that we pulled out. Are the class and the new standards that we feel are the additional ones. Again, we're not going to go in depth on these today. We're going to focus on coaching and PD, but I did want to just touch upon them. So first, suspension and expulsion. The new standards address a continuing need for a reduction in suspension and expulsion in early childhood education. And while we have specific research showing a reduction in suspensions in older grades in classrooms with teachers who have coaching on the class, we also have some research in early childhood years showing teachers with a My Teaching Partner coach reporting high levels of satisfaction and motivation with their work, and a lower sense of isolation, which are important aspects of teaching, of course, when working with behavior challenges in classrooms. We also, in the new standards, have extended hours and days, and I know that is a key change in the from the old to the new standards. But we've received calls about this new requirement, which will be phased over a number of years, from thoughtful folks who are seeing the full day as an opportunity for more meaningful interactions with children. They see the new transition times, lunch, transition to outdoor time, as opportunities, again, for meaningful interactions. And class has always been committed to the idea that effective interactions can happen at any time, at any place with a child in that school or program environment. And so we're happy to follow up with you on ideas around that. We also see in the new standards that a strengthened commitment to supporting programs serving dual language learners, and seeing the development and a clear statement around this of the development of 2 languages as a strength. And Teachstone is actively working to ensure its products and services effectively support teachers working with children who are dual language learners, ensuring linguistically and culturally responsive practices in coaching and observing with the class, as well as reviewing research-based teaching strategies with DLL experts. Next, there is a requirement of joining the QRIS in a state or locality. And in over 20 QRISs in states and counties, they now include the class. So you're ahead of the game if you're in one of those states or counties or localities using the class. But now is the time to ensure that your class professional development is in place as you look to join the quality rating and improvement system. And last, the new standards strengthen requirements for transitions among age levels and grades. The class aligns across age levels, ensuring children move seamlessly from pre-K classrooms to kindergarten classrooms, or from toddler classrooms to pre-K classrooms, learning from teachers who understand and implement effective interactions. It creates a common language and common expectations for education professionals in settings from birth right on through secondary education. And the consistency that that provides allows teachers to improve interactions with children even as they move across the age and grade levels. So what does this mean, and what do we do? Oh, excuse me, Rebecca, I'm going to actually pass it over to you to talk about what does this mean and what do we do next, and then I'll come back on.
Thank you, Amy. So, like everyone, as I opened the new standards for the first time on an airplane about a month ago, I looked to OHS to really tell me the how to do everything. But I've done what you have done. I read through the standards. I attended some sessions at NHSA, at Fall Leadership Institute. I watched a few webinars. And what I quickly learned, right, this isn't a hidden secret that we learned, but what I quickly learned is that the standards were developed in a specific way so that OHS talked about what should happen, why it should happen, right, based on comments, based on the research, based on 20 years of use of the old standards. But what they weren't going to do, and that was very specific, they weren't going to talk about the how. Because, as Dr. Enriquez said, and I'm going to quote her, we're going to tell the programs what to do to provide high quality services, but not how to do it. And this is why she said, this makes me so happy, because I think this is when we talk about one of the big benefits of Head Start, it's about local flexibility. And it's because we want to use the data, use the community assessment data, and really find out where their needs are, their strengths are, and where their resources are. And then we can use that in a very careful way to look at the program and adjust the program to determine the outcomes for the kids. And then really systematize that and think about how to create the approach and the design that they need locally to get that to get those outcomes done. And I think it's important to really think about that. So every time you kind of get stuck as you're looking at the standards, I bet you're getting stuck because you're looking for that how. And I think what I hear OHS saying is, we need to think about the research. We need to think about the standards in front of us, the research, and Teachstone can help you with that, as well as other organizations can help bring out the best research. But then thinking through your data to decide, okay, how do we want to systematize this for ourselves, and how do we want to move forward from that? So it's with that lens that I read what I call 1302, as you do too, 0.92, the piece that's bookmarked the most in my set of standards. And so when I think about the overall PD strategy that the Office of Head Start set out in these standards, I think about these 5 components, right? The first is that all programs must assess all education staff to think about areas of strength, right, data-based areas of strength, but also areas of support. The second piece that is loud and clear is that programs should provide intensive coaching to staff. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about intensive coaching, but the words that are in the standards are who would benefit most from intensive coaches. And the numbers I've heard talked about, although is about a third of the teachers in your total staff would probably benefit. The third piece is how would you providing other forms of research-based PD. So we think about it as a system. A piece of that system is receiving intensive coaching. We don't want to forget about the rest of those. And the rest of those teachers, as well as other Head Start staff, should be receiving a research-based type of PD. Umbrellaed around all of that is a communication strategy around professional development. And this is something at Teachstone we've thought of a lot in the last year, right? That it shouldn't just be a communication strategy between the trainer and the teacher, or between the coach and the teacher. Obviously, there are coach-teacher conversations that are private and confidential, but the what we're working on, or what we're doing that is working, that needs to be communicated, right? That which what we focus on and is communicated, we want to do more of. Or those things that aren't working, right? If you're a teacher and you're going to some trainings that have been happening for a number of years, you really don't feel like you're getting anything out of it, that's a piece of communication. So that ongoing communication between the coach, the director, the education director, and a relevant staff. And then I always talk about the umbrella, or the foundation, is that use of data, so that you can use the data to both see where teachers are when they start and where you should focus your professional development, and then evaluate if your program is meeting its goals around professional development. And the other piece of the strategy is that all programs must complete a minimum of 15 clock hours. And we know many of you are doing more than that, but the minimum stated in the regulations is 15 hours. And what they're also calling out is that coaching counts, because a lot of time programs think that if it's not me sitting at the front of a room lecturing and Megan and Amy sitting and listening, that doesn't count as training or professional development. But Head Start is very specific in saying that coaching will count as those 15 clock hours. So that's the high level, and I'm going to take you through a couple of slides that talk about the specifics around this PD system. So the first is this idea of a systematic approach to professional development. And when we think about a systematic approach, again, we talk about the how. When the how is what are you going to do locally? So for your local system, what will you need to develop, to document, and to implement within your system based on the data that you have? What Head Start is saying is that system of professional development should include elements of these things: curriculum, knowledge of the content of the framework, partnering with families, supporting children with disabilities, supporting dual language learners, providing and nurturing, I love that word, adult-to-child interactions, addressing challenging behaviors, preparing for transitions, and then use of data. So thinking about a system, right? And so I kind of go to almost a timeline or a Gantt chart for my program, right? So I have a 5-year grant. What am I going to do in each of those 5 years to create a system that includes that? So I can embed that into coaching, but what is almost the track or the curriculum of professional development that I'm going to provide to make sure that we really are coordinating everything we're doing? Because I think previously in many early childhood programs, we would think about a training here or a training there. All of them were important, don't get me wrong, but they didn't create a system or a curriculum of training. And so thinking about, for my new teachers and my experienced teachers, what do I need them to be doing across the timeline? Again, we're really thinking about the use of data. So the use of data to both identify staff strengths and areas of need, particularly which staff would benefit most from intensive coaching. And then using that data within the coaching plan to provide feedback and information about effective practices. And then how to take that data from your professional development program and tie it back towards your program goals and your annual progress that you need to be maintaining and documenting about how you're meeting those goals. And I'm going to quote Colleen Rathgau here, and she said in her opening remarks that the standards are really around using data to have programs go through a continuous quality improvement process through using data that they have about children and families in the community they are in. And through that, we are moving away from a process approach to an outcomes approach, right? And so it's important to think of, and I think one of the webinars I want to do later on is taking that data and really starting from your child and family data, and then back-ending into your professional development, right? So what do some of your child outcomes data say? What do some of your family outcomes data say about what professional development we should be providing for teachers? And then the biggest question I have heard is this question about what do they mean by intensive coaching? And what I say is we need to go to the research. But intensive coaching must align with the program school readiness goals. They should be a 360 approach where I'm coaching Megan, I'm giving Megan some feedback, she's trying those opportunities out, and then we're meeting again. And we think about it really as a cyclical approach, right? And there's a piece of depth and duration that we talk about with intensive coaching, right? It's not me meeting 4 times over a year with Megan. What we see in research, an average of 13 sessions with a coach, some range between 10 and 14 when I look at the data, and that is done over a period of time. In Teachstone, we usually do that about 10 months, but a minimum of over 6 months. Much better to do it across your entire school year. And then have teachers continue in additional coaching that they need if they need to continue, or move to another research-based professional development program, which is what Head Start is thinking about. So kind of thinking about it as a bell curve. You have a group of people going through coaching, and then there's a tail. What are we doing to sustain that and to follow up on that? And so maybe that is a periodic coaching session after they go through that intensive year, or maybe it's just some ongoing community-based PLC professional development. And then the last piece I'm going to talk about is which was a new piece in the legislation,
Rebecca,
or the regulation.
Let me interrupt you really quick. I'm sorry to interrupt. I see that some people are experiencing some sound getting cut out for points of time. And sometimes that's on our end. We have a really strong internet connection. Sometimes it's not. So I can let everyone know that we are recording the webinar, and the recording is picking up the sound. So we will send you all the recording so you can listen to the full thing after the webinar is over. And I'm so sorry that some of you are experiencing that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So last piece on the standards that I'm going to talk about are the coach criteria. So this is one of the changes, is that coaches will have to have a BA or some other kind of advanced degree in early childhood. And I think I always say the degree is important, but more important is thinking about that training. So we want coaches who have experience and training in adult learning. One of the things I say is every teacher isn't necessarily a coach, right? And that's typically in K-12 where I've come from for part of my career. We just move good teachers up into coaching positions. But we want to make sure we give coaches the right support in adult learning, as well as how to use assessment data. And the rationale that OHS gave for the BA is that they want to make sure that coaches have the needed knowledge and experience to best support the staff that they are working with. The other thing we think about at Teachstone is teaching's a hard job, and so is coaching. And so in our programs, we include a system of support for those coaches. That's one of the things I would recommend for you. Making sure they have that training in adult learning and assessing data, but also making sure they have a community of support so that when they have questions from their teachers, they have a community to go for support. And the last piece, which I know some of you are aware of, is the timeline. The provisions of this final rule go into effect on November 7th, 2016. However, the coaching and professional development piece is delayed until August 1st, 2017. So I'm going to hand this over to Amy to talk about what does this all mean in the research. So what is some of this why, and what do I do now?
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. So now that we've reviewed the regulations and we're covering professional development and coaching requirements, again, in particular today, though we're happy to support you in your implementation of the other regulations in which class might be a supportive measure. What are the next steps, and what does this all mean? So first, every grantee needs to review its professional development system and conduct a needs assessment to put in place a system for continuous quality improvement. Quality is not static. This is not a new concept by any means to the Head Start field and community, and it must be attended to ensure that it improves. And we recommend that this be done in 3 broad phases in a cycle of first collecting reliable data, using that data to implement professional development, and then tying those 2 together in a sustainable professional development plan. And we're also aware of the field's needs for efficiencies, capacity, and sustainability. And we try to develop products and programs and services always with those in mind and with the very deep understanding of the history and current state of affairs with resources and funding in early childhood. So first, efficiencies. When we refer to this concept, it means optimizing resources and reducing duplication of services and efforts and creating economies of scale. When we speak of capacity, we mean the skills, experience, or existing training and certification within your grantee. And then last, we talk about sustainability. And the goal of ensuring efficiencies and building capacity is to support sustainability of quality improvement efforts for the future. Next, we must determine what type of professional development is needed, balancing individualization and fidelity. Professional development may look different from program to program, and the goals of a professional development implementation may differ across programs. For example, coaching staff may have different qualifications and other responsibilities in one program than another, and certainly teaching staff and children differ across programs. So there's not one professional development plan or implementation that works the same way for everyone. Education is key to success of professional development programs. And at the same time, as Rebecca so clearly stated earlier, we know fidelity is important. So how do we reconcile these 2 factors? Well, here's what Teachstone recommends, and these are our core elements, we call them, of a professional development program or system that lead to that cycle we saw on that previous slide of continuous quality improvement. We must make sure the core elements are implemented with fidelity. In other words, developing a systematic approach that allows for implementation of the elements, and focusing on these ideas throughout your program is critical. And again, encouraging individualization around these core elements. First, frequent contact. The evidence suggests that professional development programs that are more intensive and have more duration result in more consistent effects. In Teachstone's intensive coaching program, my teaching partner coaching that I'll talk about in more detail soon, researchers found that teachers reached their maximum improvement only after completing an average of 13 coaching cycles, or about 6 months or more of very focused, intensive coaching work. Second, strong relationships. And what do we mean by strong relationships? We mean the often used phrase reflective practice, not just direction from the coach, as well as trust and respect. We know it's incredibly important for coaches to exhibit skills around consistency, timeliness, maintaining a positive attitude, and collaboration. And relationships are the primary mechanism for change. That's not Teachstone's idea. That is based in strong research on change theory. Teachers who have reported having stronger relationships with their coaches were better at trying out first and then implementing new practices. And I can absolutely attest to that. Coaching was my first foray into the world of the class. And we've seen it anecdotally in implementing MTP, that folks who were willing to risk changing behaviors in their classrooms were those folks with whom I had developed the strongest relationships. So coach-teacher relationships described as strong are associated with greater engagement by the teacher.
Amy, do you mind if I jump in for 1 sec?
No, please do.
So I'm just going to say 2 points on this. One is that I was drawn to this to think about parallel process, right? And as I think about other sessions to do, potentially we'll do something on parallel process. And so, right, in a classroom, what do we think about? We think about positive climate. And when we think about coaching relationships, it's the same thing we think about, right? So if that teacher and that coach have that there's a positive climate feeling, that teacher is able to take risks in the same way we have kids take risks in classrooms. The other piece I want to just highlight is this idea about location. And so we often think of coaching as only happening when we're in the room together, me coaching Megan, right? This kind of is my best practice to real world, right? However, in many coaching models, including in my teaching partner work that we do, is we do remote coaching models, either through phone or through video Skype or through regular Skype, right? And I think that's part of this efficiency model as you think about a program. Like, yes, the best way is to have 2 people be in the room together. However, we know some of our friends in Wyoming and Utah, in northern parts of California, or even in New York City where the traffic is crazy and there's no parking for coaches, that sometimes efficiencies are better by doing some things remotely. So as you're thinking about your programs, don't think relationships can only happen in the same room. While important, or at least to happen at the beginning of a coaching relationship, you can have good coaching relationships, and we see it in research, if those are virtual relationships. So, handing it back to you, Amy.
Great, thank you very much. Great point. So a third core element, it helps teachers feel more connected as well as supports defining program-wide goals when you have a cohort model. It influences the very important culture of a center and program wherein all are on board with the professional development system or programs that are in place. The relationships among teachers are key to that culture, to a program's culture, and they're fostered when you have professional learning communities or communities of practice in your programs, regardless, again, of whether it's a more of a classroom approach, instructional design, or of a coaching model. And the next core element, and I will say admittedly not my favorite one, quite pleased to be on audio here and not video as well, as very few of us humans enjoy seeing ourselves on video, or even, I would say, hearing ourselves on audio. But we know it's incredibly important. Watching ourselves and watching others is just a key piece to change and to improvement and growth on a whole host of skills. Absolutely not only in teaching in classrooms, but we know these stories from athletics and sports using video. And I have many stories of bravery from my experience of coaching teachers. I can't say that it's anything less than bravery when they are willing to try out a new behavior in their classroom on film and then trust in that coach enough to overcome the fear of having someone else see it and watching it with that coach and seeing and hearing themselves on video and audio. In MTP studies, my teaching partner coaching studies, it focused on seeing interactions, on helping teachers to see interactions and specific moments in video of teacher-child interactions. And we found that that brought significant gains in teacher effectiveness as measured by the class. And then the fifth core element that we'll review here is that it needs to be data-driven. To implement a strengths-based practice or program for PD, we need to identify strength and areas for growth. And the way to do that, of course, is with data and data collection. It can be qualitative as well as quantitative, but it's an essential element in a PD program. So next we'll move into Teachstone's professional development programs and then hone right in on coaching, as that's the key regulation that we did promise to focus in on today. So what does Teachstone provide? Well, our programs and services support the use of the class. It's an assessment tool based on decades of research conducted at the University of Virginia and other universities, as well as research organizations across the U.S. And as we've discussed, and as this slide illustrates, data collection or assessment and professional development must go hand in hand. They're two pieces to the puzzle. One without the other is not going to work. So for assessment at Teachstone, we offer observer training, again on all the age levels. We have infant, toddler, pre-K, K3, upper elementary and secondary. Of course, we're focused here on the birth to 5 years, which are our infant, toddler, and pre-K tools. We have a Train the Trainer program for expert class observers to become and be trained to become affiliate trainers. We then have certification, a program to become a certified class observer following your 2-day observer training, as well as a certified affiliate trainer after you've gone to the intensive Train the Trainer program. And then we have supports like calibration to ensure that class certified observers don't drift in their reliability in between their annual certification periods or recertification periods. And on the next puzzle piece, we offer these PD programs. We have our most intensive coaching, which is my teaching partner coaching. We have the Making the Most of Classroom Interactions program, or also known as MMCI. And we have my Teachstone, which is our research-based online subscription service. And all offer varying degrees of support and different approaches to the overarching goal of improving teacher-child interactions. Today we're going to hone in on the intensive coaching requirement of the standards and our research-based coaching model, teaching partner coaching, which is near and dear to my heart as it was my introduction, as I said, to the class during the research phase. This graphic illustrates the layers of my teaching partner support. First, and most central to us and to all of us, are children and their growth and development. Layered upon that are teachers who support the growth and development of children, and upon that, coaches supporting the growth and development of teachers, and lastly, specialists who come up from Teachstone, as you'll see in the graphic, who support the coaches, and Teachstone supporting that entire process. And as Rebecca mentioned, it's a parallel process where relationships are founded on trust, mutual respect, and collaboration. Those are mirrored between child-teacher, teacher-coach, and coach-specialist. We have two models of MTP coaching. We have the coach support model and the teacher support model. In our coach support model, We start with an intensive 3-day MTP coaches training, followed by practice cycles of coaching. And then the coaching begins in earnest with teacher training or kickoff meetings facilitated by the coaches. And then throughout that first year or 10 months of the coaching program, coaches receive a number of different supports from Teachstone, including one-on-one support calls with a Teachstone specialist, group calls with topic-focused discussions, online resources, and coach progress reports. And then we also have the teacher support model, which provides direct support to teachers in a program and often is done remotely, as Rebecca mentioned. The coach support model can be either remote or in person, or it can be a mix of those two, and the teacher support as well. But it is a support model, a coaching program where a Teachstone expert coach is directly supporting teachers in programs in the field. And now I'll dive into the model of MTP with a quick overview of an MTP coaching cycle. The MTP model includes a coach working with individual teachers, focusing on teacher-child interactions as observed through the class lens. It doesn't stray from teacher-child interactions being at its core, but it certainly can work with and be implemented with a variety of curricula. It can support children who with dual language learners. It's been used in a variety of settings as well. So the essential elements of the MTP cycle is this. First, the teacher records classroom video, usually about 30 minutes. The coach reviews the video, carefully selects segments and writes prompts in line with what the teacher and coach have agreed to prior to that videotaping. The teacher reviews the video segments and responds to the prompts. And then the teacher and coach discuss the prompts and practice. And that, again, is this conference in which they can be remote. They might meet by video Skype or audio Skype, by phone or in person. And then the last step in the cycle is the coach, with teacher input, creates a summary and action plan to guide the teacher's next cycle. There is a sequence that we recommend, unless a teacher needs support on a particular dimension or is particularly interested in another dimension. But generally, we begin with emotional support, but we always have one of the dimensions of instructional support included from the beginning, unless there's an unusual circumstance, such as quality of feedback. And then moving through, maintain that focus on instructional support for most teachers. We can go in depth with you after the webinar on the other cycles. For now, I'll turn it back over to Rebecca to kind of provide a summary of the supports we provide, as well as conclude the webinar. And I thank you all very much for joining us, and I'm happy to follow up at any point in time on one of my, I guess, second to working directly with children, it would be diving into public policy and regs. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Amy. So clear as mud, right, everyone? So a couple things, right? So I'm going to address a couple of the questions. We may go about 5 minutes over. I'm going to try to address a couple of the questions in my concluding remarks. But one of the questions, and it's actually a good segue to this slide, that came was, does utilizing Teachstone coaching to fidelity meet the standard and the Head Start standards? And I would say that yes, it does. And half of my company is going to say, why did you say but, Rebecca? What I would say is I want to make sure everyone remembers that we always have to go back to our local data, right, and our local needs. So I would say that the types of fidelity, the types of programs we have meet that need. it is your job as you kind of think about what coaching, all the coaching programs that are out there, which of those programs meet your unique need as your program, and of the child and family outcomes that you're trying to achieve. When we think about it, right, we think that this idea of, remember the bell curve to the tail, right, that using data, and so using my Teachstone system, which can be used to take observation data, so putting the data in that system as part of your needs analysis, and then using that as the basis for deciding who is going to benefit most. And in kind of in a Teachstone answer, it would be a portion of those teachers would benefit most from an intensive coaching program like my Teachstone. I'm sorry, like my teaching partner. The other 2/3 of the staff does need to be as part of a research-based professional program, and that could be my Teachstone, and using those birth to 3rd grade resources that are included in English or Spanish, or it could be something like MNCI, which offers 20 hours over the course of a year or 6 months of professional development. And then using my Teachstone system as that ongoing communication system. And using that data to evaluate what your progress is and having it documented. And then literally documenting through that system what your professional development is, and if you've met that 15 hours or that 15 hours or above. The other question kind of on the coaching that I'm going to wrap into this slide, I'm going to grab a piece of paper from Megan, is, and I thought about this one. So the third question we had, I skipped one, come back to it, it was, should the coach have access to or know about the evaluation for the person being coached? I would say that is one of the top 5 most frequently asked questions that I receive. And it depends on your philosophy. But like a good researcher, I went back to the standards as we were speaking, as Amy was speaking. I was paying attention to her. Then I also went back to, remember I talked about the webinars and that there were transcripts for the webinars? I would say if you're struggling with everything, if anything, go to eClick, pull up the video, and to the bottom right are the transcripts, and read them, because the answer to the question actually came through. And it was from Jamie Sheehan, one of the specialists, and she said, also in their regulation is that the coaching strategy uses the assessment data to apply their coaching strategy, and the coaching utilizes the assessment to drive their school readiness goals. That's everything connected between the school readiness goals, their curriculum, their teaching practices, so that everything is coordinated within that coaching strategy. So sometimes in coaching philosophies, sometimes there's a philosophy that coaches shouldn't see data. But the way I am reading it's not the regs, but the descriptions around it is Head Start really wants us to use that data, because they want us to see a teacher's strengths. They want us to see where teachers need to improve, and then they want us to then continually look at that data to see where we need to put a little bit of extra effort. And we'll think about that question a little bit more, Sharon, but based on the way they're talking about data, I think that's important for that coach to see that data. But it's important that we train our coaches, right, in adult learning, to know that all teachers can change. And just because you had a teacher, if you're using the class as your model, with a 5 in negative climate, that you have to believe that teacher can claim to change, and not to quote quote hold that against the teacher, but through your coaching be able to see change. So I actually wanted to come back to where we started. And I think it's important, this is the only 2 cents I'm going to say about the election. I'm not supposed to be political, but I think it's important for us all to remember to vote on November 8th because of this quote, right? We need to make sure that everyone from local government on up understands the is, right? And that there is no time for apathy or complacency. And we really need to make sure we bring early childhood to the forefront. And we have the support, both politically and policy-wise, as well as financially, to do this work. So I conclude with there. I ask that you continue, we're continuing to learn together with you around the standards. Follow eClick. Consider attending the NHSA Parent, Staff, and Leadership Conference in December. I know they're going to have a number of tracks about the standards. We'll continue to learn together to best meet the needs of teachers and children. We don't have time for any more questions, but I want to make sure your questions are going to be answered, so this is what we're going to do. So we have two individuals, Aline and Ian, who I know are on the line listening, who work with Amy and I, who are available for email and phone calls for follow-up questions about professional development that you have. They will be collecting questions as well as collecting suggestions that you have for blog posts or follow-up webinars. Megan is transcribing all the questions that come into the chat room, and we'll keep that open for a few minutes after. We will take all those questions, Amy and I will answer them, and we will put them in an Excel document or a chart and post them at the URL that is on the screen right now. And at that place, you will find the Head Start Performance Alignment doc, as well as the answers to those questions. We'll probably have that done, depending how complicated your questions are, by Monday. So kind of in follow-up, please feel free to reach out to Aline and Ian with any questions you have about the professional development of their standards. Continue sending Megan questions, and we will be doing follow-up through that URL that you see.
Yeah, can I add one more note about follow-up? I've gotten a lot of questions. I think everyone's been really excited about this webinar. So thank you, Rebecca and Amy. A lot of people have been asking if we will share the slides. Yes, we will share the slides. It will be a PDF, and there will be some links in the PDF that you'll be able to click on and open up in your browser. So we will be sharing the recording, which will have the slides with it, the slides as the PDF. And we'll also share the handout, which was the Teachstone Head Start Program Performance Standards Alignment document. And we'll also, as Rebecca mentioned, I'll compile all of your questions and we'll make sure that you get answers. It will probably be like one document that will have all of the questions and the answers. And so all of that will be in this follow-up email, I promise.
and just a note about the importance of this webinar and Megan. So Megan, please send her good thoughts, is getting married on Saturday. So when I told her the date that we needed to do this webinar, because I thought it was so important, she kind of looked at me and said, sure. So send Megan your good thoughts. Amy and I will be kind of putting together the email and doing the follow-up, since I'm going to let Megan take a little time off to enjoy her wedding.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, so we will have
Normally I would follow up the day after, but I won't be here tomorrow.
So we will have the slides available for you. We will have the recording available for you, the questions, and then there's always a friendly face at Teachstone via email or via phone to reach out to. So thank you so much, Amy in Connecticut. Thank you, Megan. Have a wonderful wedding.
Well, thank you, Rebecca.
And I look forward to seeing everyone in the field. And if you have any questions, please, we'll keep the webinar open for a few minutes so Megan can transcribe those, or feel free to send those on as additional questions. We'll learn about this together, and we'll make sure we have the most effective professional development and coaching for all teachers out there, so we can improve the outcomes of children and families. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I think we have one more slide in here, and it is our references. Somebody was just asking me if there was a references doc. So as I mentioned, we'll be sending out the PDF of the slides. So Vicki, I think you asked this question. You will be able to get the references and the citations. That was a great question.
And the last point is that Megan did just load the
certificate for attending the webinar is in the handouts panel. It is right above the chat panel, and it says handouts 2 of 5. The certificate is called HS Webinar Certificate.pdf. You just click on that, and your certificate of attendance will just download automatically. All right, keep sending in your questions, and thank you all for attending. I think that's it. So if you guys are done, then you can just hop off. If you still got questions, keep sending them in. Thank you.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.